South Africans, brace yourselves. The ANC is reaching even deeper into your pockets with a proposed 2% VAT increase. That's right. While corruption runs rampant and billions are wasted, their solution is simple: make you pay for their failures. But let's be clear, this isn't just about an extra 2% on your shopping bill. This is about how a government, after 31 years in power, is so financially bankrupt that it's resorting to squeezing more money out of ordinary citizens just to stay afloat. Now the DA actually tried to offer solutions. 6 of them, in fact. Their plan includes cutting wasteful spending, reducing the size of government, freezing non-essential hiring, and even tackling corruption head-on. Simple, logical, and effective. But then we have ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula, a man who believes that budget cuts are unacceptable. According to him, the government needs to keep spending at the same rate, even though that rate is completely unsustainable. Why? Because cutting the budget would mean cutting their luxury lifestyles, cutting their unnecessary departments, cutting the army of useless cadres employed in government positions that serve no real purpose. And instead of fixing this mess, the ANC has a different strategy. Make a deal with the EFF. The plan? If they can't get the full 2% VAT hike, they'll push for a smaller increase, at least 0.75%, as a compromise. But where will this money go? Into infrastructure? Schools? Hospitals? Of course not. It will go into the bottomless pit of government waste, just like it always has. And here's the most predictable part of all. The ANC will once again shift the blame. For every failure, for every crisis, for every disaster they create, the scapegoat is always the same: white people. Load shedding? The apartheid government's fault. Water shortages? White farmers are stealing the water. Unemployment? White-owned businesses won't hire black workers. This narrative has been pushed for 31 years, and yet the ANC has had absolute power to fix every single one of these problems. And let's be honest, the people who keep believing these lies are being played. Because while the ANC tells the poor that white people are the problem, their own leaders are living in mansions, driving luxury cars, and sending their children to elite overseas universities. If white South Africans were the problem, then explain why black-led countries across Africa are facing the exact same problems. Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Malawi, the DRC. Every failed state in Africa has something in common: corrupt, socialist-leaning governments that blame history instead of fixing their own mess. And speaking of lies, let's talk about land ownership. For years, the ANC and EFF have been pushing the narrative that white farmers stole their land. They make it sound like the current generation of white South Africans just woke up one morning and were handed massive farms for free. But let's get the facts straight. The people who actually benefited from the Land Acts of the early 1900s are long dead. Today's white farm owners didn't inherit stolen land. They bought it with money. Many of these farms were purchased in legal transactions under South Africa's modern laws. And yet, we're supposed to believe that taking these farms away and handing them over to people with no farming experience will somehow solve poverty? Zimbabwe tried that. The result? Famine, economic collapse, and a government that had to beg white farmers to return. History has already proven that expropriation without compensation is a disaster. But the ANC doesn't care. They don't care about food security. They don't care about job losses. They only care about control. But let's take this land debate even further. The ANC loves to talk about historical land claims. They love to say that land must be returned to its rightful owners. But if that's the case, then white South Africans have their own land claim, Natal. Back in the 1830s, Piet Retief made an agreement with Zulu King Dingaan. The deal was simple. In exchange for helping recover stolen cattle, Retief and his followers would receive land in Natal. The agreement was signed, witnessed, and documented. So if historical land claims truly matter, where is the recognition of this one? Where is the discussion about white South Africans filing their own claim for Natal? Or is history only relevant when it fits the ANC's narrative? But let's get back to what actually matters, the impact of this VAT increase on ordinary people. A 2% increase may sound small, but it adds up. A family already struggling to afford groceries will now pay even more. The cost of basic goods, bread, milk, electricity, will rise. Middle-class South Africans who are already taxed to the breaking point will be squeezed even harder. And yet, while ordinary citizens suffer, the ANC elite will continue living in luxury. The same people who tell you to tighten your belt will be drinking expensive whiskey at five-star hotels, paid for with your tax money. And the worst part? This VAT increase won't even solve the problem, because no matter how much money the ANC takes from the people, they will always waste it. And here's what makes this even more dangerous. This is just the beginning. Right now, it's a VAT increase. Next, it will be wealth taxes. Then, land expropriation without compensation. Every time they get away with something, they push for more. The EFF is already pushing for more radical policies, and the ANC, desperate to hold on to power, is willing to entertain their madness just to survive. So the question is simple: how much longer will South Africans accept this? The ANC has been in power for 31 years. They inherited a country with a strong economy, functioning infrastructure, and working institutions. And in just 3 decades, they have turned it into a bankrupt, collapsing mess. At what point do people stop believing their excuses? At what point do South Africans say enough? Because if we don't push back now, they will take everything. And when they have nothing left to take, they'll still find a way to blame white people for it. Think before it's too late. Demand accountability. Reject the lies.